How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. It's a 3 times weekly news roundup of everything happening in the world of PlayStation. In this video, I have 4 topics to cover, starting out with a huge upgrade to PSSR that kind of leaked the return of PS3 games on the PS5 platform, and I'm very excited about it. Then we're going to talk about how PS Plus is great in June because there's a bonus game coming to it because of Days of Play. Speaking of Days of Play, I picked out a few games that are worth picking up that are on sale for pretty good discounts. And finally, I want to talk about Cyberpunk 2 because it's in development and it sounds awesome. So let's jump into the first news story here, which has to do not only with PSSR, but the eventual return of PlayStation 3 games to the PlayStation 5 platform, which makes me so excited because I've really been missing that generation of games. So when you look at PSSR, I think largely it's been pretty good. When games implement it correctly, it looks a lot better than what we've seen this generation with FSR. FSR is just not great. It's not good even in its quality mode. I use it on the Steam Deck and my main PC all the time, and I'm just blown away at how they generationally upgrade it as time goes on. And even if you compare the latest version of FSR to really old versions of DLSS, it's not even close. FSR is just not a quality product at the end of the day. The reason it's so ubiquitous though is because it's not locked to hardware. DLSS is locked to NVIDIA chips, so you can't use it on the PlayStation 5 because it uses an AMD GPU and CPU. So at the end of the day, I think PSSR has been pretty good. There have been some speed bumps, specifically with games like Jedi Survivor and Star Wars Outlaws, but they went back and fixed it and it came out pretty good. And of course, when everyone's complaining about it, they love to complain about it, but then when it gets fixed, you don't see any news stories that say it looks a lot better. As someone who's tried these games out, I think PSSR, once it's fixed, looks great. And in the Sony games that it worked correctly with at launch, I mean, it always looked good. It really had no problems. I love using it on Gran Turismo 7 because you get ray tracing at 60 FPS. It's really hard to complain about that. But the biggest drawback that PSSR has pretty much across the board is that it requires a relatively high input resolution of around 800p. And I know that's going to be shocking to a lot of people hearing that the base input resolution has to be around 720 or 800p, but that's what we're dealing with in this console generation, especially with games that use Unreal Engine 5. That engine is not made for current hardware. That engine is made for next gen hardware, like PS6 level stuff or super high-end PCs, and even they can't run it. Look at how Oblivion Remake's performing on PC. It's not great. You get stuttering, you get frame rate drops, pretty much across the board. It is not good how Unreal Engine 5 is performing. So really, on console, especially in performance mode, the only way to get decent frame rates out of engines like Unreal Engine 5 is to run the games at 720p pretty much across the board, and they might even drop as low as 480 or 560p, and then they use the upscalers like FSR or PSSR to bump it all the way up to 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. It's not really a fair comparison either when you compare PlayStation to PC, because a lot of the PCs that are out there that most people are using can accept a lot higher of an input resolution. The PS5 uses the upscalers at performance and ultra performance presets. PCs pretty much bottom out at balanced, which is using a much higher resolution than what you see on the PlayStation 5 console, but you pay a lot less for a console and there's ease of use stuff. So that's why a lot of people like myself gravitate towards console. But because of that big drawback, that 800p limit, you haven't really been able to see it used on games that could really benefit from it, like PS1 games, PSP games, PS2 games, and in the future, PS3 games. I don't know if this was an intentional leak or he just let it slip, but
Moore's Law is dead.
I was doing a video about the upgrade that's coming to PSSR that is going to allow those older games to be upscaled, and he specifically pointed out that one of the big focuses for Sony is using it on PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 3 really needs it. I think the PS3 hardware was definitely ahead of its time, being able to output at 1080p. That was cool back in the day, but like most games, we're not getting anywhere close to 1080p on that console. They have dynamic resolution enabled, so yeah, most of them are targeting 720p back in the day, but to keep a relatively stable 30 FPS, I mean, we're dropping pretty low down to the 480p range. And obviously the maximum resolution of a PS2 game or a PSP game or a PS1 game is much lower than 720p. So if you can enable the limit to be much lower, you can then use PSSR to upscale these old games and make them look super clean, shiny, and maybe even new again. As someone who plays a lot on the Steam Deck, I have a lot of experience upscaling older games because if you use EmuDeck to install every emulator under the sun on your Steam Deck, it comes with built-in upscalers that will upscale these games games from like, 360p all the way up to 800p, which is what the Steam Deck screen is, and it looks awesome. It's not using FSR, it's using like a built-in upscaler that's like bare bones and basic as it gets, but even with that, it looks so much better and so much cleaner when you just upscale the image using these AI filters, that when we have PSSR on these older games, I think it's going to be really good across the board. Of course, I don't think they're going to be able to just upgrade the emulator. I think all these games are individually going to have to be looked at just to see if PSSR is working, but that's going to be good for their emulation as a whole, I think, pretty much down the line. The one thing that really worries me about this is that everything so far has been focused on the PS5 Pro because PSSR is not available on the original PS5. So if they're going to use PSSR on PS3 games, I really hope they don't lock down those games to the PlayStation 5 Pro. But man, if they do release the emulation of PS3 games on the actual console, not in the cloud, and they say if you have a Pro, you can upscale the games with PSSR to higher resolutions and get much better frame rates, like even 60 FPS, I think that would sell me on a Pro almost immediately. Of course, there are collections of PS3 games that have come out on the PS4, like God of War 3 got a remaster, and there's the Nathan Drake collection, and maybe a few others, but there's a lot more that never got upgrades at all, like Metal Gear Solid 4, the infamous 1 and 2 saga. Of course, there's the Resistance trilogy, Killzone 2 and 3. I mean, there's tons of games that never got PS4 ports that could really benefit from this upscaling. And if you're like me and you really grew up during that generation and you see how awesome those games were back in the day, getting to see them in a whole new upscaled light sounds awesome. I think this could be announced pretty soon because Sony, it's come out that they've been working on the PS3 emulation for a couple of years now, and the people who remade the emulator for PS1 and 2 games, Implicit Conversions, they leaked that they are working on a PS3 emulator for the PlayStation 5. So I think it's going to come out sooner rather than later. But man, if you're into PS3 games like I am, knowing that you're going to get the upscaling that looks really good on these emulated games in the future, I'd grab a PS5 Pro while it's on sale. I don't think you're going to see it drop lower than $650 pretty much ever, and I feel like price increases are still on the table once they run through their 3-month supply. A lot of the gaming media are making it seem like it's guaranteed that the tariffs are going to come back after 90 days. I think the eventual goal is to not have tariffs at all and to just reformulate things to be more in favor of the US. That's really what's been said this entire time, but of course there's always a chance that the tariffs will be reinstated and then the prices will have to go up. So if you're interested in playing games with PSSR on the PS5 generation, I think the PS5 Pro is worth it at $650. If you're interested in playing PS3 games and have them upscaled to look really good, not using FSR, but using PSSR, I think it's also a no-brainer. So yeah, buy a PS5 Pro. I think you will not regret that purchase. But speaking of Sony being cool lately, let's talk about the PS Plus Essential Games in June because the list is honestly pretty good. So the first big game you're getting is NBA 2K25. I think this one was supposed to be pretty decent. It came out in September, and I know that Take-Two kind of came out and said it didn't sell all that well, so maybe they just wanted a little bit of a cash influx from Sony. Regardless, it's the newest version of NBA 2K. So like if you want to keep up to date with it, you're going to get it for free in PS Plus Essential. A game that I liked, didn't love, but like think is worth it for free on PS Plus is Alone in the Dark. If you're looking for a pretty decent kind of budget survival horror game, I understand why it didn't sell all that well because it wasn't amazing. Like it wasn't on par with the Resident Evil remakes or anything like that, but it was still pretty decent. And I think it's worth it for free to just try it out. Then if you're a Jet Set Radio fan, there's a spiritual successor called Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. It's a bad title in the sense that it sucks, but it's a good title in the sense that it's easy to remember. I think this game got decent reviews, so like you may as well add it to your account. So if you want to play it in the future, it's just there to download for free. And then finally, because of Days of Play, they're giving away a bonus game, which is the Final Shape expansion for Destiny 2, which brings it up current. So if you've kept up with these, because like they've given away every expansion for Destiny 2 in PS Plus Essential, you could have got the entire pantheon of Destiny 2 expansions for free, which is pretty cool, and they'll stay in your account forever, unlike Game Pass where they were on there for a minute when Beyond Light came out and then they disappeared when The Witch Queen came out. So I stopped playing on Xbox because I would have had to rebuy the entire thing. PS Plus Essential games stick in your account forever while you keep paying for the service. So that's awesome. I've seen some people saying this is a mid-month. I think it's pretty good. I think getting NBA 2K25 for free is awesome because it's a live service game you have to pay for that arguably should be be free to play with how much they ask you to pay for it. So if you're interested in these games and you kind of drew a line in the sand with how much they were asking for with microtransactions, I feel like you can't go wrong grabbing it for free and spending a couple bucks on the microtransaction stuff. But speaking of saving money, the Days of Play sale is going on right now. There are so many games on sale and a lot of them are really good. So if I went through all of them, it would be an hour-long video. So I just picked out some of the games that I've enjoyed over the past few years that I think you should definitely grab while they're on sale. The first one is the newest game on the list, Atomfall. Now this was already a $10 discounted game at 60 bucks when it came out. I completed this game in around 15 hours and I loved it. There is an expansion coming out soon that I plan on going back to play. If you're into like Fallout 3 and Elden Ring, it's basically like if they took those two games and mashed them together. It takes place in the Lake District of the UK and it's a cool post-apocalyptic world because everything is green and lush. The shooting is decent. I wouldn't say it's the best first-person shooting I've ever played, but it's like on par with the Fallout games. It's nothing amazing, but it's also not terrible. Control Ultimate Edition is $6, and if you somehow haven't played Control, now is the time. It got a PS5 upgrade that makes it look amazing. It already looked great with its PS5 patch, but like the actual native PS5 edition looks even better, and this comes with all the DLC. I thought the DLC was pretty good for it. Nothing incredible once again, but like for $6, it's not only worth playing through the entire story, but also just messing around with the DLC. I love Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 5 is one of my favorite Capcom games ever, and I think it's underplayed. So for $10, this should be the one that you buy. If you're only going to buy one game on this list, if you do not own Devil May Cry's PS5 edition, grab it for $10. It's so good. I cannot wait to see what they do with Devil May Cry 6. It's just one of the best franchises out there, and it really shows off the graphical power of the PlayStation 5. Even though it's a PS4 game at heart, they did a good job upgrading it, and it runs at a hard locked 60 frames per second. For $10, you can't go wrong. Forza Horizon 5 is already on sale. It's $48. If you held out because you didn't want to pay full price, I don't blame you. I think it was crazy to charge full price with how old that game is and how cheap it probably was to port over to PlayStation 5. But that's Xbox being Xbox. What are you going to do? At $48, get the Ultimate Edition with the extra cost that it has because there's so many car packs and extra expansions. It's definitely worth it. I think this game's incredible. I think it's a 10 out of 10 racing game. And if you have a Logitech wheel, it works natively with this game. I have around 500 hours in it. And most of those hours were put in after I got the wheel because it just opens up the game so much. It has all of the sim aspects of the driving that you get with Forza's motorsport games. So yeah, let me know if you grab anything in the comments below. Let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077 sequel because shockingly, it just entered pre-production. So I actually thought that The Witcher 4 was going to be like an all hands on deck situation for CD Projekt Red, but it turns out they opened up a new studio here in the United States, and that's the studio that handled the Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk, and they're apparently working on Cyberpunk 2 at the same time that the main studio in Europe is working on The Witcher 4, which is cool. The game just entered pre-production, which is the new announcement, so it's probably still 4 or 5 years out. I'm excited for it, but the other thing that got me excited is the guy who made the Cyberpunk role-playing game that the game is based on. He got to see some footage of the new open world, and not only is it going to include Night City, it's also going to include what sounds like a post-apocalyptic version of Chicago. Oh yeah, the idea of having 2 cities to explore sounds incredible. I have not gone back and played the next-gen version of Cyberpunk because I had it on PC when it came out, and it was not nearly as bad as it was on console. I 100%ed it, and the story was so good, it still stuck with me. So like every time I want to sit down and start a new character to replay it to get to the DLC, it's still so fresh in my mind that I'm like, not yet. I think I will do it this summer though, because you know, there's a lot of hype around it, especially with the second game coming out, and it just feels like a good time to jump back into Night City. But I like California as a setting in games. I think it's fine. I just don't love desert scenarios, and I've seen California a lot, having lived there for 10 years. I'm Midwestern at heart, so the idea of getting to explore Chicago is a lot more interesting to me. I just like Watch Dogs because it was in Chicago. I like Fallout because, you know, Fallout 4 took place in Boston. I'm more of an east side of the country type of guy. I like that setting more than desert settings. So while going back to Night City sounds cool, going to Chicago sounds even better. Hopefully they actually finish the game. And if you're looking at Phantom Liberty as the example of what this new studio in the United States can do, I think things are looking pretty good for the game. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm pretty excited for it. I just wanted to bring it up at the end of the video because I'm excited for it. I think exploring Chicago and Cyberpunk sounds awesome. Let me know if I'm crazy down in the comments below. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.